We are here
We are.
with Utah Home Inspections owner and operator Glenn Pearson.
That's me. Yep.
Yeah.
So, but what we want to know is like, why home inspection? What home inspection? Do we care? Why pay for it? If we're getting an appraisal inspection, should we get a home inspection?
Are appraisals and inspection the same thing?
An appraisal is an inspection.
That's what I was thinking.
Yep.
They can be very different, but yes, it is an inspection.
Okay, so like, what is the coolest thing that you have found on inspection? Like the weirdest, coolest thing on a house that you're like, this never happens.
I found bones underneath the house.
Human bones or chicken bones?
I let the sellers know. I didn't dig into them, literally, more than I needed to, but it was on a house built in 1906 in a mining town in Utah.
So they could have buried someone there.
It
Could have easily been. I mean, a mining town, you never know what happened too. So yeah, I found that. There was also a creepy burned doll in the same crawl space, ironically.
Who was the owner? I'm just kidding.
I can't disclose that, but it was for the buyers, but the owner was there the whole time I was doing the inspection. I was like, hey, you want to look at this?
Do you like it if the owner's there?
Not really, no.
Why?
I prefer, because, well, for one thing, I felt like he was trying to derail my focus a little bit. And so for that reason alone, I don't like them there. Plus, it's just a distraction.
What about the buyers?
I don't mind if the buyer's there, but I prefer they meet me when I'm done, because when they're there, I end up explaining what I find as they're following me around versus taking pictures and documenting it.
Well, that makes sense.
I get
Okay.
distracted and I tell the buyer, so the buyer is educated, but it's not written down sometimes. I miss photos because I'm explaining the issue to the buyer who's right there. So it just distracts me. I'd rather just go through it by myself.
Which is a super important point, right? The reason Glenn does home inspections, so home inspector does home inspections, is to find out the quality of the home, the functionality, right?
Yeah.
The reason a lender does an appraisal inspection is to make sure we can foreclose on it and recoup the value.
Yay.
That's it. So there's huge differences. The appraiser is going to go through and inspect the home for value.
He'll also compare it to other homes.
Right.
I could care less about the homes around it. I am looking at that home
Right.
specifically.
So what are the big things you look for?
Major things obviously, but the things that people won't notice.
Like what's a major thing?
Major thing, a roof leak in the middle of the living room, something
Okay.
like that. So
Okay.
I'll notice that. I use thermal on every inspection. I don't think you're doing your due diligence.
What is thermal?
Thermal imaging allows you to see the temperature
this
variations.
infrared?
Yeah, it's like infrared.
So
It is
if
infrared.
it's water, if there's like some gas leak or anything like that, you can catch it with it?
So the thermal will show temperature variations. So like a water leak in a wall, that spot will be colder. So I'll see a blue spot there.
Okay.
Same with if it's missing insulation or there's any issues that way. The boards and stuff transfer heat a lot more than insulation does. So the boards you can actually find studs with my thermal camera. I've used it as a stud finder multiple times.
Okay.
Because you can see the heat difference very, very clearly with it. But leaks you can see because they're wet, so they're much cooler. Water transfers heat very well. So the thermal camera looks at the surface. Everything puts off a color, a light. And the thermal image sees the light, and then that's how it can figure out. The
it tells
wavelength
you.
that light puts out is the temperature.
Oh, okay. And like, do you charge extra? I mean, you do it on every inspection, but do you charge extra for it, or is it just part of your deal? Or?
It's just part of it, yeah. I was gonna say that if you don't do, as a home inspector, if you're not using thermal, I don't think you're doing your full due diligence as a home inspector, because there's a lot of things you can miss. I mean,
What about mold?
mold?
So let's say, this is a real question. Okay. Let's say you had
They're
a
all
water
real
leak.
questions we're talking about.
Well, sometimes I know the answers to the question I ask. I don't know. This was like one. So you had a water leak a while ago. Swamp cooler leaked 10 years ago, 8 years ago. They replaced it, put in AC. But in those 2 years it was leaking, they developed mold. Now that's not, because like water evaporation typically drops the temperature 20 degrees, blah, 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 blah.
Yes.
So easy to see. Easy to
Yes.
see if it's currently wet. What if it was wet?
Yeah.
If it was wet, mold requires humidity and moisture to grow. So if it was wet, the mold would have grown during that time. And then it's probably dried out. but it still is there. Mold spores will go into the air, and that's how mold affects you. So I'll bring an air quality meter when I'm there. I have it going. It's very basic. It's not a full air quality assessment that you'd get from a professional company, but I have an air quality meter I set up on the counter when I get to the house, and it tells me the particles in the air. And if the particles in the air, if there's a lot of them, you could have mold issue, you could have a chemical problem, you could have smoke in the house. So there's a lot of things. The mold that's in the house is what's going to bug you. I do mold sampling, mold testing. I provide that as a service. I test the air while I'm there for mold. Basically, it's a petri dish that I set out that attracts mold. So mold spores will attach to that. It takes 48 hours for it to germinate, and then I can see if it's a lot of mold growth or very little mold growth. We have mold naturally in our atmosphere, so just by opening your door and closing your door, you're letting mold into your house. That's just part of the world we live in. So I will, in the warm weather, I can't do this in the winter, but in the warm weather, I'll set a mold test outside, and then I'll do 1 or 2 inside, depending on the house, and that way I can use it as a control to see if the home is worse or better than outside. If it's worse than outside, obviously you have a mold problem inside. So that's how I determine that. If the tests come back and there's a lot of mold, I had one 2 weeks ago where they had a basement that they ended up putting like $35,000 in. They dug a trench all the way around it because it kept flooding. That was 2 years before I did the inspection, and I did 2 tests, one upstairs and one downstairs. I couldn't do one outside because it was like 40 degrees and raining. But the one downstairs, after 38 hours, had over 30 mold colonies on it. The one upstairs had 6.
Dang.
Wow.
So normally you have 2 to 4. That's pretty average I see in a house, but it had over 30 downstairs. And so it was still in the walls. It was still floating in the air. The only way to really get rid of it is through really good HEPA filtration. That's why if you're concerned about mold and you have allergies, you get a really nice filter. You can get a whole house filtration system. There's companies that'll come in and do it. There's some good filters online. There's some cheap Chinese ones that say HEPA filtration, but they're not. If you want to get a real HEPA filter,
Don't buy it on Temu.
yes. Don't buy
Right?
the Temu one. But yeah, get a nice HEPA filter, and that will get the mold spores out of the air.
Was there active mold in the basement, or was it?
It was all dead. It was just floating around still.
Wow.
So
But as soon as it touches water, like your lungs,
It will.
your nasal
that's
passages,
super fun.
that's when it will grow and affect you.
Like
But
aliens
yeah, it's like little aliens floating around. Mold, I mean, it's a bacteria. So it
that
just
pop out of my stomach.
it grows. So
Okay, so what other things have you besides like mold? This is one of the things that you check normally, or do you charge extra for
I
it?
do charge
or
it extra 'cause it does take additional
Yeah, I think
time,
yeah,
so.
and also like there's like meth and other things that you like radon and the other things that you can do besides your basic.
Yes.
Okay, so what are those ones?
So I include radon testing in all my inspections as well.
Okay,
How do you do
cool.
that?
And what I do with that is I have a Radon iPro, which is a tester that reads radon levels start within 10 minutes. And so what
There's
I do,
mold here. I'm just kidding.
what I do
Yeah.
is there probably is. There's mold everywhere. So I do an average during the 2 hours or 3 hours I'm at the house of what the radon levels were while I was there. That is not, and this is a disclaimer, that's not a full EPA required radon test. That is a 48-hour average. Mine is mostly for convenience only. If they want to do a longer test, then I can do a longer test. I'll charge for that. But that test during the 2 or 3 hours will let them know what the radon was while I was there.
Okay.
Because radon, I mean, that's just a gas. So like, if the house was like condemnable because of radon, they could open all the windows, put out a fan. You come for your few minutes, you get a clean test.
Yep, it'll air it out. So I try and find places where air is stagnant the best I can. That's not always possible, especially in a house that's livable. But in the basement, I have 3 radon testers, so I can put them in different places and then compare and see how they are. But yes, air movement will.
Like I've seen
Remove the air
new construction that they did a radon test and it came positive.
Yes.
So that is just like, to me it was interesting because usually when they're building the house and everything is open. And so back in the day I remember saying, well, if you think it has radon, just open the windows and that's it. But I guess it's not just open the windows because new
Well, it seeps
construction
up
is
to the
just like
ground.
It goes.
Yeah.
So radon is uranium that's decomposing inside rocks. That's where radon comes. It's radiation from uranium. You know what uranium is used for? Nuclear reactors. When you crush rock, that causes it to decompose more. So it can be in your foundation that's decomposing. It can be rocks underneath your house. It will always gradually decompose until it's gone, but that could take thousands of years.
So then, do you recommend? Because I've seen a lot of companies that are like selling the, with the home inspection, they also sell you like the excavation or whatever they do to put a tube to do it. Do you recommend like something like that, a mitigation like that, or just?
I'll refer it. So all I do is report what the radon is. If it is high, I recommend they get another company like Utah Radon Specialists or someone else that does the systems. They can come in and do an EPA 48-hour test.
Okay.
And then part of their test is they determine the source of where it's coming, and then they put that mitigation system
near there.
the closest they can get to that, and that sucks. That sucks air from underneath the basement slab, and then out that pipe. So it doesn't even go through the house. So that's how they're able to get rid of it. It just pulls from underneath the house and puts it above and outside the house where it'll dissipate.
Cool. And so, do you know like if radon is everywhere in the world, or is it more like Utah has an extra? Because we're so cool, so we have a little extra, or
we are
like,
cool.
or Texas, nothing happens over there, or California has even more because they're cooler than us.
There are some geographical locations that have a higher concentration of radon. Obviously, if we have a lot of stone in Utah, there's a lot of rocks underneath us. Everywhere has bedrock, so there is a chance of radon being everywhere.
Okay.
Uranium is a natural occurring thing that happens in stones and stuff, and so anywhere there's stones, there can be radon.
Makes sense. Yeah. Cool.
Interesting.
That is super cool. So, no, go ahead.
How many things do you typically find wrong in a home? Because like I have people that freak out every once in a while. They're like, "There's 147 things that are wrong." I'm like, whoa. Only one or two of those really matter.
Yeah.
Tell us about a standard report.
So standard report, I'll find, I don't know. It depends on the house. If it's an older house, there's guaranteed to be more issues that I find. But, I don't, it's hard to put a number on what I find, 20 to 30, but I don't label everything as defective. There are some home inspectors that will label any find they find as defective, but then when they actually find an issue, everything's defective already. People don't know what to focus on. And so I try to make my reports as clear and easy as possible to understand, so people will know that this is a real issue that probably should be dealt with the sellers preferably.
Do you do like the red, yellow, green?
Yeah,
thing?
so I have the rating system, red, yellow, green, blue if it's not inspected. But yeah, I include those, and my goal as a home inspector, especially, I have a real estate background. I've seen a lot of reports that have scared buyers away. And they were needlessly scared away because it overwhelmed. They were overwhelmed for one thing. They didn't understand all the details in it. My goal is to not scare buyers away because of me. The home can do that all on its own, but I will not be the reason the buyer walks.
Okay.
So that's my goal as a home inspector.
That's actually really good because I've seen a couple of inspectors that are like in the industry. We all know that he will take your deal down. Like seriously, it's like if you really feel like
Just
your buyers
scare
are
everyone.
not that into the house and go with him because he will find a way to scare them even more and then cancel, And I mean, they're good, but the way it's kind of like, when an attorney tells you something, they say it in their technical way, and you're like, wait a minute, what just happened, And it's just like, oh, there's a little mold, or like there's a little this, and it's not that.
It's true, and people are definitely afraid of mold. Mostly, people fear what they don't understand.
Yeah.
Most people don't understand mold, and that's where a lot of fear comes from a home inspection. Is there's a lot of things in there they don't understand, and so they fear it because it's overwhelming. And so I try to simplify it the best I can.
So for sellers, do you recommend for them to get a home inspection before so they can show it to the buyers, or is it just more of a no, just let the buyer, find their own because nobody's going to use it anyways, or what do you recommend?
So there's a couple of good reasons to get an inspection for selling. One, you can get a head start on some of the issues. Every home inspector is probably going to find the bigger issues. Every home inspector finds something different, but those bigger issues, water leaks, stuff like that, the home inspector should be able to find. So that'll give the sellers a head start. They can fix those before the buyer comes through, and that eases some of the negativity that might come from a buyer's inspection. Another thing is they can then, again, they're going back to every home inspector finds something different. They can then present that inspection and say, hey, we got it inspect. These are the items we've already taken care of. You can look it over. If there's anything else, we can negotiate it. If they approach it that way, that's going to make the buyers feel much more at ease and less likely to go get their own home inspection, get a different opinion in there, and find a whole new list of items.
That's new things.
So for a seller, it's usually a pretty good way to do it. Obviously, they're not going to find everything, but they can alleviate some of the pressures.
You would think that the seller already knows what's wrong with their house, right? I mean, wouldn't they? They've lived there.
Well, that's the problem. They've lived there. It's like when the sun goes down. You're playing outside. Remember as a kid, you're playing outside, and your mom's like, come in, it's dark. You're like, it's not dark, I can see. And then you go in the house and you're blinded. You look outside and it's totally dark. I think a lot of times, going through houses and seeing like the fingerprints, like on the edge of the door, around the corners and stuff like that, because they just slowly accumulate. But a set of fresh eyes is a huge deal. Glenn, let's pretend we're not going to hire you at all. These people are not going to hire you. How do they do their own home inspection? Like, what are the most important things that they'd have to look for?
So with every house, I mean, there's some obvious ones. Checking smoke detectors. That's one of the easiest overlooked things. A lot of houses don't have adequate smoke detectors.
Well, okay. So how many smoke detectors do I?
You're supposed to have one in every single room.
Every room.
And then outside of sleeping areas, so in the hallway outside the bedrooms.
Okay.
And then outside gas burning appliances. You're supposed to have a CO detector and a smoke detector.
How close to my kitchen do I need that? Because like I don't need the ready bell going off every time.
Yeah, you don't want that.
Especially if
it
you're
depends on
Latino.
the house. I'm not going to say a number, but it depends on the house. You should have one.
So somewhere nearest the kitchen?
Someone near. So if there was a fire in the kitchen, not caused by you cooking, you still want it to go off before everybody's dead.
Okay. Okay. So smoke detectors. That's good.
That's easy.
I would have never thought of that.
Yeah. Just this brand new house. Well, 2011 or 2021. This townhouse. The previous owner removed half the smoke detectors. They're sitting in the basement.
They beep.
So I'm guessing they beeped and they got tired of it and just started removing them all. And they're all connected because that's how they're required now. Is they're supposed to all be connected to the house. They put them downstairs, and I walked through with the buyers and the buyer's agent, and neither of them noticed until I said something in the walkthrough.
Interesting.
Wow.
So they're missing them. Like their up floor didn't have any smoke.
Well, this is super interesting too, because a lot of times when I started as a mortgage loan officer, I was like, you don't need a home inspection on this. It's new construction.
No. So I actually have a
let's
home
hear it.
builder. I have a home builder. I've met with the owner of this company. They have, I don't know, they built 100 homes in Eagle Mountain last year. The owner called me because I started inspecting some of the homes. And he wants me to work for him, but I think he's trying to get me to be biased towards him. I'm not going to work for him. But they never, and this is almost every builder, once the roofing contractor gets off the roof, no one else ever looks at it. The city inspector doesn't look at it. The builder doesn't send someone up for any final walkthroughs. And I found 8 leaks out of 10 homes I inspect. I found 8 leaks that were in the roof on these brand new homes that were less than a year old.
That's insane.
One of these homes had the dryer vent. It was behind the garage roof section. It had the dryer vent painted shut when they painted the exterior of the house. And it was just, their dryers never worked great. And it was just running condensation down, and they had mold growing all the way behind their laundry room because of the condensation that's running down. This house was 8 months old.
So my story, I had a buddy, before I did loans, he bought a new house, and his heating bill was off the charts, and he had icicles everywhere. And so finally he went up in the attic, and there was no insulation. None.
Yeah.
So the home was finished. Had a certificate of occupancy. It looked beautiful. But it's actually really interesting because now on new construction, I recommend getting a home inspection more than on a lived-in home, because a lived-in home, there's kind of clues that you can see. I mean, you wouldn't catch everything, and there's some freaky stuff that can happen. But the new construction homes, it's way easier to overlook some of the things because it's been missed by a few people, and everything's pretty. Like you wouldn't see the water-stained sheetrock from the leak in the roof because they put it on last week.
Yeah, exactly. People expect homes to be perfect because they're new. That's why warranties exist. Nothing is perfect. If you buy a brand new car, you know that because it has problems. I mean, nothing's perfect. You can look out, but that's why warranties exist. Builders offer 1-year warranties on everything, and they offer a 5-year on the roof usually. But going back to the attic with no insulation, the city inspectors don't get in the attic either. Roof in the attics, they don't get on.
Interesting.
So they
right?
take their word for it that it was done correctly.
So, like on a home inspection, if you check, then they will tell them to fix it. They fix it. But, I mean, it doesn't need to be, what I'm trying to ask is, like, it doesn't need to be the home inspection right then. It could be after they bought it, after they close, and they still have to inspect it or something.
Yep, we call it
If
11-month inspection.
Okay.
Because your warranty ends in 12 months. You get an
Okay.
inspection in 11 months because some things will come up
Yeah.
as you're living there. Not all the issues make themselves manifest at the beginning.
Yeah.
And so you could have issues I found a gas leak in a brand new house. It wasn't there because
How do you find a gas leak?
I have a gas leak detector. I run along all the gas lines.
Okay.
Oh.
So yeah.
enough.
That's just part of my process. When I go in the utility room, as I'm inspecting stuff, I start my gas meter. It takes a minute to boot up or whatever, and then I just run it along the pipes. But this house was a 6-month-old home, and I actually talked to the HVAC contractor where the gas line was, and he said he sprayed everything with water, and it wasn't leaking. He knows it wasn't leaking at the time, and so as a leak that developed, either from the pipes moving, something moving, or just the seal didn't sit on whatever he put on the threads, and it just started leaking over time. It was a very minor leak, but it was still a gas leak.
But it's still a gas leak. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, you're dead, you
yeah,
know?
if the air is stagnant long enough, it
Yeah.
can build up in the concrete.
Well, yeah, that's
So-
cool because natural gas is heavier, just like radon. So your whole basement could fill up with natural gas, and you come down there and spark your feet. You know, a little
Static
bit.
Yeah.
electricity on the carpet or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, you don't know with
Exciting.
some of those things. So
Yeah.
it's interesting. And new construction, and that's why you get 11-month inspection. I do discounts for warranty inspections for homeowners, but they can take that list and they can decide what they want the builder to fix under warranty, because the warranty is supposed to cover everything, and builders will fight them on this. So I recommend if it's one of them I know that has an issue, maybe a little earlier, maybe 8 or 9 or 10 months, get an inspection done, because you want time. The builder's going to push back and delay it, and then be like, oh, I'm sorry, you're out of warranty. We're not going to do that. 'Cause I've had that happen on my own house I built back in 2015. So
Wow.
Sucks.
So it's a good thing to tell buyers to say, okay, if you don't really want to do, because I feel like we fight them for new construction inspections because they're like, no, it's new. I'm not going to spend on that. I already spent this or that or that. And so it would be a good suggestion of like, okay, if you don't do it right now, it's okay. Just rebuild your money, start well after you buy that furniture that your wife really, really wants. Then you can do the home inspection because it's an important deal for your house. Yeah.
It changes the transaction though, because like I had clients. It was new construction. They really wanted to move in. The builder hadn't completed some things that contractually they were supposed to do, but they really wanted to move in. So I funded, and they're like, okay, per the contract, finish our yard and put in the fence. And the builder never did until it's possible I heard about it after, but for over a year, the builder didn't finish. So
Wow.
you could get your home inspection after, but you lose a lot of bargaining power.
Yeah.
And it could be a substantial item, and you could say, hey, this conflicts with the seller disclosures, with the property condition report, right? So we're going to take you to court, but it may be a bigger push. So I would highly, highly, highly recommend you get a home inspection done as soon as possible.
Yeah.
When the market was really hopping back in 2021, I would have people do home inspections before they wrote an offer. And then they would write the offer non-contingent. The due diligence would be waived entirely.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a crazy time. So yeah, getting it as soon as possible, absolutely.
I mean, it still happens. Like for investors that are looking for the fix and flip and so on, they go and they take their, they take their inspector, and they check the house and then they do the offer. So it's not like, right now we're gonna start and then we're gonna see if they give us time, because these people want to close. They have the money. They just want to figure out that in a week and start with the process, because if they have hard money lender or whatever, the faster the better. And before they get that money, they rather spend the money on inspecting the house than waiting until it's there, right? Until in the middle of the process. So
Yeah, I flipped homes for 5 years, and you make your money when you buy it,
yeah,
not when you sell it.
no, you saw
So
it.
if you
Yes.
miss a big problem when you're
Yeah.
looking at a house that you're gonna flip,
Yeah.
there goes your profit.
Yeah, there's a
Yeah.
lot of people right now that are like calling and say, "Hey, we want to do this," and I'm like, "Ooh, I don't know that right now is your time, but we can try. You know, we can
Yeah.
always try."
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Sorry, I'm forgetting the cameras there. Sorry, I'm not talking to you guys.
We're missing anything.
You're asking what buyers can look for as they walk through a house if they don't want to pay for a home inspection. The smoke detectors was easy. If they're discolored too, they need to be replaced every 10 years. That's another note with the smoke detectors. If it's faded brown, then you know it's old. Other things they can do is they can look underneath sinks. Very easy. Turn the water on, look underneath the sink, see if it's leaking.
Okay.
Yeah.
They can also put their knee up against the toilet and see if it's loose. If it's loose and it's been loose for a long time, the wax seal will be damaged and it could be leaking inside
So if the
floor.
toilet wiggles.
If the toilet moves, not just the toilet seat, that's more of a cosmetic thing. Nobody
Yeah.
wants to sit on it without it. But the toilet itself, I push my knee against the side of it and the front of it to see if it moves back or forward or side to side. And if it does, that means whenever you sit on it, the wax seal is getting moved. And wax doesn't mold back, especially when it's around cold water. So eventually it's going to start leaking around that wax seal and it'll go into the subfloor underneath your tile where you can't see it. And there's one house I saw had been doing that for years. And just every time I flushed, just a little bit of water went inside underneath the floor
Yeah.
and it started getting soft around it. So
Yeah.
that's one thing the buyer can look for. There's other things I've seen. I'm trying to think of what would be easy for them to see.
Like on furnaces, for example, you see. I mean, besides the when you see them, they're like super old. They're still like a huge thing, and you know they're green. And I'm just kidding. And so besides that, like when they're okay, how do you know that they're like? Besides they have a sticker, or you look.
Yeah.
What do you look for?
You can look at the sticker, see when it was last serviced. You can also, it's pretty easy to access the filter. You can pull it out, see how dirty it is.
Oh,
That'll let
that's
you know the
actually pretty good.
maintenance.
Yeah.
So, and that's a pretty easy thing. You can take the cover off the furnace and see how dirty it is in the
Yeah.
inside, but a lot of buyers probably aren't going to do that.
Yeah.
But you could. I don't think a seller would not sell you the house because
Yeah.
you did that. But again, there's
Yeah.
some picky sellers out there.
Yeah, there are some.
But yeah, you could look inside because they can always replace the filter right before they put it on the market. Inside the blower assembly, you'll see dust and signs of a filter that's not
okay.
sealing or just an old filter. Water
I like
heaters,
that.
you can check the age. You can take a picture of a water heater sticker and have Chat GPT have it tell you the age of the water heater.
Oh, cool.
So if
cool.
you can't see the age
Yeah.
on it, you say, "Tell me the specs of this water heater," and Chat GPT will tell you the age of the water heater. And
Cool.
it'll
Wow.
list all the specs.
Cool.
So that's something they can do really quick. Even if they didn't do it while they're walking through the house, they have that picture where they can do it later.
Well, I think that's something that I can do. You know,
As a
like is
realtor?
like if you're walking the house and they're so excited always because you know it's a new house, they're buying it, they like it, but there's like little things that you have to figure out. You can't just go because you like the house. I mean, you can go, but you have to go knowing the problems, you know, that they're happening. And so, like, if I see something like that, the first thing I'm going to say, hey, you need to call home inspector because you need to deep more of what is this, why is this happening, or how is this
And
going?
That's what we do. If
Yeah.
you see red flag, well, even if you don't, but if you want to know, you see something, then we can go look at it further
Yeah.
and let you know if it
Yeah.
needs a contractor to look at it and something more to be done. And that's my whole point. I'm not there to send contractors. I'm there to tell you what's going on, and then you can decide if you want to send a contractor.
Yeah, definitely.
Have you ever seen a perfect home?
No, I have not seen a perfect. Dang it. I've seen some better homes that are better than others, but yeah, going back to people living in their house forever. I inspected this house. They've been at 30 years now. They had a leak underneath their sink for at least 10 years. They didn't know it. And the bottom cabinet behind, because they have
would be like, well,
they have
yeah.
a filtration system in an unfinished basement that they never went in. They're an older couple in their 70s now. They've been in the they bought the house when they're in their 40s, and they still had kids at home. They never went down in the basement. It's 4 stories on this house, and it had been leaking underneath that sink where they couldn't see it because they had a filtration system and the tank was right there, and the leak was right behind it. It had rotted through the bottom of the cabinet behind there and was dripping on the subflooring, and it rotted that and started rotting the boards underneath it.
Wow.
For 10 years, and they didn't know it was there. So that's why I
Wow.
said get an inspection on
Yeah,
a
you-
house. Even if you're living in a house every 4 or 5 years, get an inspection, because I guarantee I will find stuff you didn't know was there.
Yeah. Wow. That's actually pretty cool. I like knowing. So the fact that you're telling me, yeah, this usually happens when you're there. You don't even notice it. It's like that's. Besides all the water bill, didn't they figure out with the water bill because it was like tiny?
Gradual drip.
Okay.
So it probably maybe added $1 a month to their water bill, but
Yeah, so
they
that.
wouldn't have noticed in 30 years.
Yeah.
There was
But
$1
everything
more.
rotting there. Wow.
So
I
yeah,
have
it
a-
was perfect behind
Yeah.
it. I don't know how the cabinet whole floor hadn't fallen out, but it had rotted through. It must have been small enough that it just rotted that small circle over time and then just kept dripping below that. And it gradually gotten a little worse too. So it started out just ruining the floor above it and then it started ruining
Well, talking about Chinese torture, right?
Yeah, just a little bit at a time.
Seriously.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
that's
But
pretty
yeah.
cool. That's pretty cool.
There was something else I was going to say. I can't think of it. But yeah, you never know on a house you've lived in.
Yeah.
The roof. Bathroom vents.
Oh.
From basically 2010 and earlier, a lot of builders for about 20, well, it was worse before then, but a lot of builders would just run them to the eaves and they wouldn't put termination caps on them.
Okay, where are the eaves? I don't know. He
Eaves
knows.
are
I
the-
don't.
So underneath the roof, you have the part underneath it, and they have little vents to pull
It's like
air
the
out.
house
Okay,
is
okay,
here,
okay.
then there, and then the roof.
All right.
Yeah,
That's-
yeah.
Okay.
So the eave is the part that goes out, and it's designed to, get water away from the house. They would run them to that, and this happened on my own house. My house was built in 2006. We bought it, and I didn't go in the attic. I didn't do any inspections on it when we bought it, like thoroughly. I was flipping houses. I was paying attention to other homes at the time. I wasn't paying attention to my own home. But I went up in the attic, and our house is a south-facing house. We have 3 bathrooms that vented to the back of the house. That's the north side. I had black mold all on the north side of my roof because they had zip tied those bathroom vents to the eaves, and zip ties don't last very long.
No.
We bought the house in 2018, so 12 years later, they had broken, and they're just venting into the attic, and it didn't get warm enough on the north side for it to dry out the moisture. And so
That's why
this-
it's mold.
And you have the cold wood and the moist, warm air. It's like that.
Yep, perfect storm for mold.
Yeah, I've seen that in a few houses where they vent into the attic.
We
It's
have
a bad idea.
brand new, home built in 2019 in my neighborhood, same thing. One of them was just ducting into the insulation. They didn't even run it to the eaves. The other 2, they ran to the eaves and just sat in there. They weren't attached to anything. But all of that water, all that
Yeah.
air, and
Hot air
water,
goes up. It doesn't go down to the
Yeah,
front of your house.
especially in the winter, your roof still gets warmer than what's around it because of the surface. It'll draw air in from below, and that's what the eaves are there for, is to pull cold air in to cool off the roof system. Well, that moisture just went right back up in the attic, sticks to everything because it's cold, and then you have a mold problem. And they
Dang.
Wow.
had a bad mold problem. They probably had 600 square feet of mold in the attic.
Wow.
So, and that house was built in 2019. So, don't think it's gonna. Be
Yeah, I don't think you're safe.
No.
But yeah, if you really are close on a house or paying attention, you can look and see if it has on a new house. They'll have the vents that are obvious for the ducting of the fans. You can also turn the fan on and see how loud it is. If it's a new house and the
Oh,
fan's
yeah.
loud, that's a red flag because the airflow isn't what it should be.
Oh, because usually they're like not loud.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
quieter. They've gotten
They
quieter.
used
They're
to
not like
be
the 90s
super-
and the
yeah.
early 2000s where
They
the
used-
cheapest fans.
yeah.
Those still exist, but most builders put in a little bit quieter fan. And especially if you test the other bathrooms first and you find one bathroom where the fan's louder, this home I inspected is built in 2021. They had the vent on the outside of the house, but they never drilled a hole. And they crumpled the end of it, and when you turn the fan on, you could hear like an air sound, kind of like a vacuum sucking. When you're not by the motor, you can hear the air sucking. That's what you could hear in the bathroom. You could hear the air fighting to get out.
To get out. Yeah,
And it
makes
was louder
sense.
than all the other bathroom fans, and it was the same model. So that's one thing you can just flip the bathroom fans on and see how they do when you're walking through a house.
Wow.
If one's
Thank
louder
you.
than the other one, take a note of it.
Yes.
Might not be venting correctly.
Wow.
Interesting.
Well,
But anyway,
yeah. Do you have any other questions that come to your mind? I mean, I'm really grateful that you're here because those are like little stories and help that help us, not just the sellers or the buyers, but also us as realtors and lenders to, know what's out there and figure out.
yeah, the more you know, the better you can help people around you.
Yeah, definitely.
That's me. That's what I try to do. And I have ADD, so I've learned a lot of things in my life.
That's cool. I mean, not that you have ADD,
No,
but
but
you know what I mean.
I get bored easy. The home
Yes.
inspections is perfect for me because I'm pretty analytical. We flipped houses for 5 years. I had a general contractor's license, and I let that lapse. It expired, and I did a couple things while I was trying to decide what to do, and I landed on home inspections, and I love it because I can find problems, and then I can tell someone else to do it. So
Yes.
I love that. But one issue we run into in Utah is there is no licensing requirements for home inspectors.
Oh.
You don't have to have any kind of license to home inspect homes.
Interesting.
So you can just
So
go
there's-
to whatever, the Yelp or whatever and just find who's the best there, and that's it. You don't have to have somebody tell you that you
You
need
can
to.
start a business and advertise home inspections without ever getting any kind of license. So
Wow.
Utah, they're strict on real estate. They're strict on mortgages.
Yeah.
Nothing for home inspectors.
Also appraisers.
Right,
Appraisers
appraisers,
are
yeah.
like, yeah.
And I'm okay with less government regulation, but some things I think need to be regulated because there's there is a national certification you can get, and that's what I did. But there are states like, especially the southern states, it's as strict as a contractor's license to be a home inspector.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
So, but
definitely
Utah,
makes sense.
For some reason, has
we're
nothing
not
on
there
it.
yet.
So, yeah, you definitely
Yeah.
need to qualify your home inspector.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, you kind of know because there's been people that I'm like, oh, I do home inspections for $100. And you're like, what? Okay. And sometimes the buyers I've seen like, yeah, let's just hire that one. I'm like, no, don't hire that one. That one is not going to tell you. That one's going to tell you, the roof looks old. The roof looks old. And that's it. I can do that for you. Don't do
Yes.
that,
That's why we wanted a home inspection.
Yes,
We could see
exactly.
it looked old.
Yes.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Every
Perfect.
home inspector, just like every builder, every contractor, there's different levels for sure.
Yeah.
Basic minimum for a home inspector is make sure they at least did some type of international certification.
Okay.
Because there's two main ones, and they're easy to get. One of them is an accredited college. That's what I went through, and I'm just about done with an associate's degree in home inspecting through that college.
Oh, that's super
So
cool.
it's kind of rare to go pursue it that far, but I figured I'm doing all the classes anyway. Might as well
Yeah.
just have it qualified.
Yeah, make
Yeah.
it good.
So-
That's
For sure.
awesome.
Anyway,
pretty
but
cool.
yeah, that. Make sure they're certified nationally. Otherwise, just anybody can go start inspecting homes.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you so much, Glenn.
Yep.
Yeah.
No problem.
And well,
Thanks for having me here.
yeah, no problem.
Fun.
Yeah, it is fun. See you guys next time.